All right, welcome back, everybody, to Pivot Point of View. I'm Destri Millsap, along with Becky Pearson, and what a start to the week it has been. I don't think there's been a Monday like this in a long time. We had Inauguration Day, we had Championship Football, Martin Luther King Day, not necessarily in that order, but we had them all on the same day. So this week has started off with a bang. Lots of exciting change happening in the world. For most people, some of you might differ in that opinion, but hey, I think it's exciting. There's some change coming. Good change, bad change. We don't know yet. We'll find out. But there is change coming. So big start to the week, and Denver's going on. Fort Worth's fixing to kick off, and maybe already has some stuff already happening. So been trying to watch Denver. They broke the record on Hello Stella. Sharon Hall did. Broke the arena record there at Denver, so congratulations to her. Love that horse. She's so gritty and tough, and fast, obviously. So that is quite a start to this week.
Yeah, for sure. And, I tried to watch some of the inauguration stuff yesterday. I was busy during the day, but I did watch him signing the what do you call it when executive orders. He was signing those executive orders last night, and I thought it was so cool just to listen to him have the dialogue with the reporters in the room, and just talking about all of that stuff. And I'm pretty excited. I really think he's going to go in there and shake some things up, and I do believe we need that. So we'll see what the next 4 years brings, but I think there's going to be some good things coming for sure. So yeah, that was awesome.
Agreed. And regardless of what happens outside of our control with that stuff, there are things that we can't control, and that is our health, our mindset, our attitude, all of those things. We can't control that, even though so much is out of our control.
For sure. Yeah. And, we don't usually have a whole lot of say in politics. I mean, you got to get out and vote when you get the chance. But we can change the people that we interact with every day as far as how we act, how we present ourselves, how we conduct our businesses, conduct ourselves. And when we feel strongly about an opinion or something going on, I think it is important for us to stand up for what we believe in. There's a way to do that respectfully and, not get in, hurting other people's feelings. Sometimes that happens, but if we stand up for what we believe in, we don't have to do it to where we're putting other people down. But I do think it is important for us to stand up for what we believe in. So I really hope, I feel like there's a change coming in the country where, there's maybe less people really buying into the whole woke kind of stuff. I think that was kind of crammed down our throat over the last, I don't know how many years, but there's fewer people than we think that really truly believe in that, I feel. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think we don't have to take that as the norm. I think we respect the fact that there are people out there with differing opinions than us, but we don't have to accept that as our norm, if that makes any sense.
I agree. I mean, some things are just seem so unnatural, and it was at a point where it was almost like common sense just went completely by the wayside. And everything that you and I were taught growing up, even though we grew up at different times, it was still in a time where we were taught certain things and certain principles that were just plain right versus wrong, that I think got a little bit lost along the way. And, however you feel about that. One thing that has kind of really spoken to me the last few days, went to church Sunday, and just that, everybody has their own struggles with stuff and everything else. And, whenever whenever you're moving forward with a new venture and things like that, there's always challenges, and most of them are in your own mind. And at least they are for me. And so, um, but God puts something on your heart, right? And He's not going to put something in your heart that is impossible. He's not going to put something in your heart that is not true love, or something that you don't truly love to do. Um, and then that becomes your calling in life, right? I believe your steps are ordered, and you're here for a reason, and you're called to do stuff. And so, that was the whole message. Sunday was a great message. And then today, um, my daily stuff that I read or whatever, this verse seemed perfect for everything that's going on. It says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." 2 Timothy 1:7. So we are not made to be fearful. We're not made to fear the unknown. We are made to be strong and be self-disciplined and have our own power. And so I think, just with all the change happening in the world, good or bad, in your life, good or bad, that is something to remember, that we're not made to be fearful of what is happening. That is not how we were made. So,
Amen. And I think, as we study God's word more, that's when we can trust in him and put our faith in him, and he wouldn't put those plans in our heart and in our path if it wasn't meant to be. So, yeah, I love that verse. That was just spot on for sure.
so you had some stuff that you noticed throughout your week, just stuff with your body, with the 75 hard, your daily pictures that you had noticed. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, part of the 75 hard is that you take a daily progress picture, and you know, like a lot of us, when we look at pictures of ourselves, like I don't like to see pictures of myself, and a lot of people, that's a really hard part of 75 hard, is taking that daily picture. And what I noticed from day one, now I'm like day 15, 16, something like that, um, is that I always noticed the waistband of my shorts it was off, and the hemline on the bottom was off. And throughout the years, like, people have said, "Oh, you got one leg shorter than the other," but my pelvis was usually twisted too. So we know that when your pelvis is out, okay, out. So when it's twisted, one of your legs can go shorter. So I always thought that was the case. But as I started thinking about this a little bit more, I started studying the picture a little more. And it wasn't just that my waistband and my hips were off, but my knees were off. Okay. So was if it was just a matter of my pelvis being twisted, I figured my waistline would be off, but my knees probably wouldn't. And my arch isn't dropping more on that side. And so that really got me thinking about like true leg length discrepancy. And I really feel like I probably have my lower leg bone, my tibia, is probably shorter than my left tibia is probably shorter than my right. That would be how my knee level is off. And so, like, I just had this aha moment where I'm like, dang, this is a big part of why I continue to struggle with my pelvic stability. I had hip pain last fall, um, back pain, I'm just walking around constantly unlevel. And that, like, it really hit home with me because this is stuff I notice in my patients all the time. But I don't have, like, I can't really check that in myself very well. And so then I kind of experimented, and I put my scale is pretty thin. I put my scale under that left foot, and then I snapped a picture. Sure shit, my waistband is leveled out. My knees are leveled out. And so, yeah, so this week I've been working on, I taped some cardboard to the heel of my orthotic in my left side. And now I've been taking my daily pictures in my tennis shoes. And what do you know? My waistband's level, my knees are level, and my back feels great. But now I've noticed in my daily pictures, like my upper body now is twisted. And so I'm starting to level out my foundation, but now I'm seeing the other compensations above there coming out more. Like my right shoulder is lower than my left shoulder. And so now that I've gotten my left leg the same length as my right, now I'm seeing the compensations in my upper body. And so it's really been interesting for sure to see those changes. We talk about it all the time on here, but yeah, I'm living it right now.
So you mentioned a few things there. There's a couple different types of leg length discrepancy. There's structural or there's functional. Structural being there's a change in actual bone length. One bone is shorter than whether it's the tibia, the femur. There's some sort of structural change there that you cannot overcome, whether it was from a fracture, a bone disease, a tumor, a surgery that didn't go like it was planned, and they took a piece of bone out. Something along those lines can cause a structural difference, and the way that you find that is by measurement. You measure one leg versus the other leg, and you can have your PT or AT or some sort of professional that knows what to measure and figure out what part of you could be structurally shorter than the other. Or there's functional. And functional is, like you said, the hip rotation, maybe a joint contracture, maybe a fallen arch in the foot, maybe a tight muscle or muscle weakness somewhere that's not supporting like it should. So those are types of functional weakness areas that can cause leg length discrepancy as well. Somebody tells you, well, you got this leg longer than the other leg. Well, do you really? Or, is it made that way, or is there a lot of stuff going on? And I think where people get messed up is they get tunnel vision and they only look at the hips, or they only look at the knees, or wherever that may be. It could be all the way up in your T spine. You could be rotated somewhere up there or tilted one side to the other. It could be in your feet, which I think that a person about has to start at the feet and see how you're striking the ground and where your contact is. I think you have to, if you're treating anybody with hip problems, knee problems, especially any type of chronic pain type deal, you've got to look at the foot and ankle and see what is happening when they strike the ground and start there. I mean, that has become a big thing of my treatment plan with lower body injuries, especially just through my own experience and my own knee surgeries. I always feel like I'm dropped off on that side, but if I loosen my calf up, my hamstring, and make my ankle move, I feel even back up. Am I all the way even? I don't know. I broke this left ankle twice. I don't know if I'm truly even, if that's catching up or not. But there are two different types there that we talk about, and and you can treat them kind of the same, and we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like you got to start if you notice something off, you got to start somewhere, and looking at the feet is a great spot. Throughout the years, I have noticed that my left stirrup always felt longer than my right. But then, I chalk that up to, okay, pelvis is twisted. Or, we always get on the left side, and sometimes that stirrup leather does stretch out more. And so, like I said, there were always little things that maybe were signs that this was going on with me, but I justified it with other possible causes. And so, or sometimes I just take that stirrup up a notch more. So, anyways, I think the big thing that I wanted to impress upon people is like, take a look. Don't be afraid to look at your pictures. Like, don't be afraid to kind of critically analyze what's going on. No, do I like to look at my bare legs? Like, nobody wants to see 51-year-old lady. Like, I mean, it is, I don't even want to look at those freaking pictures, but it really has given me some insight to that I think will kind of help me get better. So but yeah, starting at the feet, where's my arch height, how's my flexibility, and then my knee level. That was the biggie for me. And then I immediately thought about my horse Big, because Big also has a leg length discrepancy. So he has what they call like a high-low syndrome. He grows way more heel on his right side than he does on his left side. He grows very little heel on his left side, and he almost had, like when we bought him, he almost had a club foot on the right side. And so when my shoer does him, he tries to take off as much heel on the right side as he can, and as much toe on the left side. And then we want to make sure that he's level at his knees. And then when we couldn't quite get that, perfect, then we had to add a little wedge on his left side. So me and my horse are gonna wear a heel left on the left. But you know how it comes out in Big, he gets it ends up putting his sternum out, and he gets really crabby when you go to snap his breast collar, when you reach down there. I mean, he wants to bite you. When he's off, he'll tell you that he's off. And so, yeah, you kind of got to watch him, but you know that he's not right, when he gets a little crabbier.
Well, that is very interesting that you both have that shortness on the left side, and
Mm-hmm.
you're both just kind of that way. Like I was asked
Mm-hmm.
a question, and I think I might have talked about this last week, as I was asked the question, is it, what if your horse is the one that's off, causing you to be off, or are you causing your horse to be off without your body? Is it the chicken or the egg? I mean, and that is one of those
Right.
situations that it's interesting that you guys have it on the same side. Obviously, he was born with that type of deal, growing more heel, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just something he's always done. Or,
Mm-hmm.
is it something else that affects you too? So,
Yeah.
quite interesting that you guys are both short on that left side. Which, if I think back to your eval, it if I remember right, you set more in your right hip too, coming around the barrels and riding open and stuff like that. So, I think that's interesting how that can play a factor as well in how you sit your horse and certain things like that.
Yeah. And Big is tall, he's 16'2", and I think a lot of times those really tall horses, I noticed it. I had a horse off the track years ago that was 16'2", and I honestly think his legs were way longer than his neck. And so when you see those really tall horses and they are, you know, they've got their head down, they're eating off the ground, a lot of times they have to spread those front legs. They'll put one foot forward and the other foot back in order for them to reach the ground. And that horse always did the same foot forward and the same foot back. So I started noticing that on him. And he did grow his feet a little bit differently as well, but not as different as Big. And so Big is big, and I do notice that with him also. He always puts his left front forward, so that would wear down that heel more, and he puts his right front back. And so is it something that he developed that way because his legs grew more than his neck, and so he always, took that stance. Um Again, like we talked, is it the chicken or the egg? I don't know. Or, did he have an injury at some point? He had started off on the racetrack but never raced. And I'm not sure why he never raced. Um, I think there was an injury there. I think he had some things going on with that right front and, just maybe exacerbated an already a problem that was already there because of how tall he was. So, just something to look at in your really tall horses, horses that are in that high low syndrome. Why are they that way? And then, yeah, how does that translate to you and your body when you're riding? So, yeah, we'll keep kind of looking at that. It might just be a freak deal that he and I just are both short on our left, and we ended up, God put us together. I don't know, but who knows? It's. I honestly have no idea how long this has been going on with me. I've never had an injury to my left. I've never broke a bone in that left leg. I don't have a tumor that I know of or anything like that. So, um, maybe just God didn't make me quite as long in that left tibia as the right. So I don't know.
There's no telling. And again, to point out the importance of get your horse's feet x-rayed, figure out what's going on at that level, because it can take pressure off of so many things up the chain and just have them move better every day. And some of them will grow faster, and you might have to keep them trimmed up more often, especially if they're wearing one side more than the other. And so I just think that's something that people know to pay attention to, and should pay attention to, is because, like, some horses, when you trim them and you think that you're trimming their foot how their foot should be, well, if you look at the x-ray and stuff, that isn't always the case. Yeah, and some people might argue with me on that, but for instance, we have a horse who's that way, who, if you trim his feet the way that they look like they're perfect and everything else, if you x-ray him, it looks terrible, and it's all the way off. But if you trim them to the x-ray, you're like, golly, this doesn't look right.
Yeah.
But that horse travels better and is more sound than everything else when you do it that way. So it's kind of an interesting deal how deceiving that can truly be.
Yeah. Yeah. Our eyes can tell us a lot, but I really feel like with, um, with a good set of x-rays, whether it's me or if I eventually go in to get some, I probably am not going to unless I run into some more problems. But, if you really want your farrier to be able to do the best job they can do for your horses, get in a good set of lateral, at least lateral x-rays of their feet so that they know, what angles they need to trim your horse at and shoe your horse at. And I just think it's a tremendous benefit for everybody involved. So it'll either confirm that your shoer's doing what he needs to do, or it'll get things going the right direction if they haven't been going the right direction. So we do X-rays actually quite often, especially on those ones that have different angles of the feet, the front feet. It is just very, very useful, and I think my horseshoer appreciates it, and then we know where to go from there to help them get better.
Right, and especially if you're dealing with young horses, and as they grow, you getting updated X-rays and how their body changes and stuff like that as they grow, and make sure that those are all current as well. I think is important.
Yeah, and this is kind of going off on a side note, but so the horses that grow at different angles, they can be very challenging. The horses that are crooked-legged, oh my word, those can be such a nightmare for a horseshoer. And we had a great horseshoer a few years ago that he really taught me the the basics of shoeing a crooked-legged horse. So the mare that we called Clementine, absolutely my favorite mare ever, my favorite horse ever to run. And Clem is big old black mare. She's got a wide chest on her, and then her legs come down, and then she toes in. Okay, and she was so hard for some shoers to shoe. And we'd end up getting quarter cracks because there'd be too much pressure put on the outsides of her feet. So if you look at her foot and you just trimmed her the way you thought you should, it ended up that she was too high then on the outsides of her feet. And then she'd get a quarter crack, and a quarter crack comes from too much pressure. And so Jason ended up finding him through a number of different people, but it was so interesting. So he came out and he like laid on the ground in front of her, and he took pictures with his phone, and he took so much time assessing her. But the big thing that he did with her is that he balanced that heel to where the cannon bone was perpendicular to the level of her heel. And so, which is really hard to do on a crooked-legged horse. And so he shot her for probably about 6 months, and it was the soundest that mare had ever been. She was firing great. And then Jason says, "Hey, we're moving to Texas." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what am I going to do now?" And so he showed me, it's called a T-square. And it's basically, there's this metal device that's like a T that you run down the middle of the back of their cannon bone, and then the T part of it, you balance their heels out with that. And I actually found one from like a forge where they actually make it for horseshoers. And so I bought it. So then our next horseshoer, I'm like, okay, you've got to use this when you trim her so you get her heel height right and you get it level. And that's been such an invaluable tool to us when we are, even if there's not much of a deviation in their conformation, it just helps you make sure you have the heel height right. And so look up like horseshoer T-square or farrier T-square if you have a crooked-legged horse that you're having trouble keeping them sound. I think that would be a phenomenal tool for you or your shoer to have in their toolbox. Like I gave mine to my horse shoer so that he can keep it and use it on others. But yeah, it's all about symmetry and making the body work in the most efficient ways possible, for sure, whether it's us or our horses.
Exactly. And that, again, those would be more along the lines of like structural type
Yeah.
situations and stuff. And so, you have to treat those differently. And then the rest of it comes from the functional side of making sure you have the right muscle tone on both sides, making sure that, you have the correct mobility where it needs to be. Making sure the joints move and rotate and glide back and forth. I can't tell you. So a lot of this, again, I'm going to go back to the foot and ankle because I think it's so important. Is I worked with a lot of people who have had knee pain, hip pain, and it's funny how the knee or hip that they're having pain, that ankle is locked up, and so if it doesn't rotate, then whatever it lacks in rotation, that knee takes. And whatever the knee lacks, the hip takes. And so then it goes all the way up the chain and eventually through the T spine all the way to the neck and that type of a plane. And so making sure that those joints move. And then if you find a restriction in the calf or in the hamstring or the hip rotators, the hip flexor is a big one. So much stuff happens through there. Making sure that all those muscles aren't under contracture and are allowing the hips to move like they should, so everything else can move. Or the calf, making sure that the ankle can move like it should and rotate. Having those muscles in the lower leg, the hamstring, the quad, all of those things, checking for contractures there and seeing if there's any restriction when you're treating these functional or structural leg length discrepancies as a PT, as an AT, just anytime you see those things.
Yeah. And talking on those lines, I worked on a guy this weekend. He broke his ankle 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, there wasn't a ton of rehab, and he lives in Western Kansas, Southwest Kansas, or Western Kansas. We'll just say that. And so we started him on a program about a month ago. And he always talked about his right hip being tight. Well, when we did his eval, his right ankle does not move as well as his left. And like you said, it just followed up the chain. And so it was really fun so I did a virtual eval on him, and then we were able to meet up this weekend and did a hands-on eval, a hands-on treatment. And so just mobilized that ankle to where it would move better, and got him doing our retro stairs exercise, which not only got him moving that ankle better in a more functional pattern, but then we were able to get him to shift to the back side of that hip. And wow, what a difference that made then to his pelvic neutrality. So it can go both ways. It can lock up and go up the chain, or we can unlock it and get everything up the chain to move better too. And so it was really fun to work on him and have that moment, be a big turning point in his recovery. And so, because sometimes when he did certain things, he would notice that it would actually make his shoulder blade hurt when he did certain leg and pelvic exercises. And so, I'm like, okay, we've got to get to the bottom of this. We've got to get some hands on you so that we can get everything lined out a little bit better. So that was really, it was a very good session. You know, it was colder than heck, and we met in McCook. Thank goodness Giles down there at the McCook facility. He goes, "Hey, use that heated wash rack to work on him." You know, so it was a great place to work on people, and nice and warm. And so I'm willing to go even use some heated wash rack in the middle of the winter to see people. We're very creative, and that's the nice thing about working with horse people is you all just are like, let's just do this wherever, you know. We can do it in the barn, we can do it in a wash rack, we could, you know, wherever. So
Absolutely. Where there's a will, there's a way. And quick point on making sure that everything's moving. You know, we talk about making sure the ankle is moving. Well, I think there's so much focus on the talus a lot of the times that people don't make sure that the fibula and the tibia are moving like they should. And if they're not, either get them to move. You can't just get them to move at the ankle. You also have to make sure that they're moving at the knee and rotating at the knee as well. And same thing with the femur. If the femur's not moving at the knee, or if it's not moving at the hip, you have to make sure it's moving at the knee and the hip. You can't just make sure it's one or the other. You have to check both ends. And sometimes I think that's a step that people miss.
mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Yeah, so for people that aren't medical, what Destri's saying is those two bones in your lower leg they need to move down at your ankle, and they need to be able to be moving right up at your knee. And then if your thigh bone isn't moving right at the knee, it could be coming from limitations up in your hip. And so it really is good. Like if you're struggling with that, it is so good to have somebody with good manual skills, good knowledge of how the body should move to assess you and figure out, okay, where is this restriction coming from? Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So hey, how are you doing in the cold weather? How are you Okies handling this?
Well, so as you can see, I'm wearing a vest. So yeah, we're still in that Arctic blast or polar vortex or, you know, whatever it's called. But we got one more day of it. And then next week, it'll be in the 50s. And I can't wait.
Yeah.
That'll be so nice. Spring is around the corner. Maybe that groundhog will see a shadow. I don't know. But
So
the sun's shining today, so if he was out today, he would still see it as long as he's not standing on the north side of something. But
yeah.
yeah. So this morning I wake up to a text in our family group text of my sister that's in Kansas right now said -6, wherever she was at, Harper, Kansas, I believe. And so I look at the weather where I'm at here in Bushy Head, and it says 5 degrees. So I'm a whole 10 degrees warmer, right? Whole 10
I was
degrees.
minus 15 this morning.
Hey, I'm a
Yeah.
full 20 degrees warmer than you. So I'm still that my coveralls that I got while I was up north still work down here just the same. And yeah, we're thankful. We're 20 degrees warmer than most people north of us, maybe 30 degrees depending on where you're at, and 10 degrees warmer than some of the folks in Harper, Kansas right now. So yeah, I guess we shouldn't complain. It's not what we're used to. We shouldn't complain. That south wind's coming. It's going to bring better weather, and soon. Tomorrow will be a nicer day. It'll be mid 30s, and then it'll get up in the upper 40s, 50s. Can't wait for that to happen. So
Yeah. So going out yesterday sucked. You know, I had to do my 45-minute outdoor workout. And I don't know if you've seen my picture, but so I pulled a Sam Flannery and I got out my ski goggles and I got my ski mask on. So I got my ski mask and I got my goggles, I got my down coat, and I go out and I do my chores. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to run from pen to pen. Okay, so I can count my time doing my chores as part of my workout. Okay, while I'm out here. So I'd go throw my feed to one pen, and then I'd run to the next carrying my buckets and throw the feed to them. And then I'm pitching hay and run to the next one. And then I still have not met my 45 minutes yet. So I'm like, dang it, I've got to keep doing this. So I don't want to go down the gravel road by my house because if my neighbors see me like in my ski goggles and ski mask, like I think they kind of wonder about me anyways. And then if they're gonna see me on the road like that, like I'm like, I better just stay on my property. So the flattest, like I'm not going to sprain my ankle kind of ground that I have is I have a return alley next to my arena. And so I run up and down my return alley until I get to my 45 minutes. And then, yeah, it was so flipping cold, but I did it. And that is, the mental discipline that this program is giving me. I'm loving it. I really, really am enjoying it. This weekend is going to be hard because I'm going to go to Chicago. Emma has won some awards with Giselle and Cutco, and she was their number one person in the nation for her push and her number of sales. And so she's going to get some awards in Chicago. So um, I'm gonna I am gonna try to get all my things in. I think Friday is gonna be a hard day because I got to fly, and then that awards deal is that night. I don't know how much time I'm gonna have, so I'm gonna have to really prioritize to get it in.
The outdoor workout is gonna be tricky there.
Yeah.
That's gonna be because besides it being dangerous, from what they say, more dangerous than Western Nebraska somehow. You're gonna walk by all these pizza restaurants and everything else, and want to go inside. Most likely, I don't know if you're a pizza girl like I'm. Pizza.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And to go with your picture that you sent me, I don't know if it was your leg length discrepancy or is that why your goggles were crooked? Was your leg length? Or is that just how they sit? Or
some days I'm just kind of half cocked.
Yeah, one leg shorter than the other. I'll just chalk it up to she's just shorter on one side, and that tilts her goggles. It's you're doing chores that you don't just run in a circle.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm off, physically and mentally. I do have one other quick funny story. This was a mental off moment. So I have some contractors here doing some work, putting on some siding, and I needed two more little 3-sided shelters for my horses. And all my buildings are gray, okay? And the guy putting up the shelters for my horses, like he ordered the wrong color gray. Okay, so it's a little lighter than the other shelters. Well,
50 Shades of Grey, got it.
Exactly. So, but I never read the book or seen the movie. Okay, so anyways, I'm like, well, it's okay. Maybe I'll just name this place 50 Shades of Grey because that's what I got going on. And he looks at me, he goes, ooh, that's kind of saucy. And I'm like, before I say that to too many people, maybe I better read that book. And so I started, and holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very saucy. So I'm not going to be naming my place like 50 Shades of Grey Ranch,
Probably stick with pivot point on that one.
Yeah, I think so.
If your neighbors already question things, 50 Shades of Ranch or whatever,
it is going to probably bring the wrong clientele for sure.
Oh no, you live right there close to old I-80, so I'd really. Yeah.
Yeah, never know. Yeah, so sometimes I'm off a little mentally and physically. So getting on
I
track though.
think we all have a little bit of that going on. So,
Yeah,
and is it one versus the other? Are we off mentally because we're off physically? I don't know. Maybe we'll
I
find
don't know.
another episode. Maybe we'll talk to somebody about that.
For sure. I'm sure that there'd be a lot of people that would tell me I'm off mentally pretty bad. So it's all right though. I am
Right?
what I am.
Isn't there something around horse girls that maybe they're not there? I don't know.
Yeah, we might have a little genetic defect in us that makes us a little more prone to like the horses. I don't know, but I guess we got to embrace it. And if you don't like it, then you're not for us. So we're
E-
not everybody's cup of tea.
Exactly. No one, that would be boring if everybody was everybody else's cup of tea. It would just be so boring.
That's right. It would. It would. All
All right.
right. Well, I think we got this topic covered. Anything else that you got a big week coming up?
Yes, I go to Pittsburgh for basketball. Our men's basketball team's playing there. And then we got some other stuff going on. Next week, we go to Fort Hayes.
Yeah.
Exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And then the week after that is my wife's family's bull sale, the Lime Rock Flecky bull sale. So check that out. Follow them on Facebook. And if you're needing a good Simmental Angus bull or one or the other, um, look them up. They got a lot of years of genetics in that program. They're really good. So
I used to think horses were way more expensive than cattle, and then I worked on some high end bulls. Holy buckets! Like they can fetch quite a price tag. Uh, it's pretty neat to see
yeah,
that.
you got something right there close to home too. That Angus place right there in North Platte has some very high selling bulls. I hear.
Really, yeah. I worked on some over by North Loop, North Loop, Scotia area. Paws Angus over there. They had a young bull that was needing some PEMF treatment, and so I'm like, well, I've never worked on a bull before, but he had some shoulder stuff going on, and so we did some PEMF, and man, it helped him quite a bit, and so he was good in time for their sale, and so that was fun. He brought a price of a good horse, so that was fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think people, they, of course, we just know the horses, but I mean, like even Dr. Kim and some of the other animal chiropractors I know, they work on sheep, they work on dogs, and one guy I know he works on bucking bulls, and I watched a video one day on they worked on this bucking bull, and he went from like barely hopping to I mean really tracking and getting it on after he got worked on. So it's a whole deal, man, and those bucking bulls cost a lot, and that industry has its own um, different level of things, and so yeah, it's important for a lot more things than what people realize.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we have some friends with bucking bulls too. That my friend Jimmy Kerner, she used her Magna Wave on their bucking bulls, and definitely helps them feel the best that they can and get them to buck as good as they can. And they're athletes as well, so gotta remember them too. Let you close it out. You're so good at that tagline.
I'm a closer. All right,
Closer.
what I do. Uh,
Right.
thank you all for listening. We have so much fun doing this. Thank you for supporting us. And as always, let your health be the pivot point to your success.